Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's been asked the question a lot lately. Hey Skye, I know you're a big Kanye fan. What do you think of the new album? How do you even answer that question, right? You can tell by the runtime of this video that I'm going to do my best to tell you what I think about this. But what do you do with Donda? What is Donda? These 4 or 5 different versions of the same album, 23 songs with 4 remixes, or is it 27 individual songs? It is a great mass of music, a glob of music, a glob of an album. How do we parse it out? How does somebody who considers, who is an academic, take this work and sort of like break it apart and contextualize it and put it into the oeuvre of Kanye West, or Ye, as I suppose he wants to be known now? I want to start off with a fairly bold statement. All Kanye albums are exactly the same. Yes. Stylistically, they're different. Thematically, they're different, okay? Stylistically, each album ends up changing hip-hop and usually pop culture and usually high culture all at the same time, right? That's just what he's able to do with his art. And thematically, he raps about and sings about different things on each album. But fundamentally, like any great artist, everything that Kanye does is some form of a self-portrait. A complicated self-portrait. Complicated self-portrait for a complicated man. And this album is very hard to follow, very hard to put into a box, many different themes, and it's difficult to kind of put them all together and say, what is this portrait that we see? It's kind of a cubist portrait, like Picasso, who he often compares himself to. Although I think Kanye is probably a lot more important than Picasso was, but that's for another conversation. Or at least similar. Like different angles of the same person, and you can't quite tell where we're going or what exactly is happening. Now, I would say that all of his albums have been like this, right? I mean, I saw when Yeezus came out, and when I saw the Yeezus concert, I remember thinking, he is not long for this world. He's going to die. He's going to kill himself. He's going to do drugs. He's going to get shot. I don't know what it is, but I can feel him on a downward trend. And then The Life of Pablo came out, and it's like, wow, I didn't even know how dark it was on Yeezus. Thematically and spiritually, I find The Life of Pablo to be his even darker than Yeezus. And then after that, we have Ye, which is even darker than Life of Pablo. And then we got to have this little Jesus is King coming through, where all of a sudden we start to see a rebound of who this person is, who has put all of his struggles, all of his difficulties with arrogance, all of his difficulties with family, his difficulties with all the human beings in his life. Somebody who wears a mask at all times, intentionally, obtuse, doesn't answer a lot of questions straight, says contradictory things one thing to the next. He already told you who he was, and he didn't say it on a Zane Lowe interview. He said it in every single one of his albums. He is actually one of the most transparent artists out there. The problem is, he's just acting at a different plane. His life is so different than any of our lives. His experiences are so different. Who comes through on Donda, right? Like who is this Kanye, right? If this is a self-portrait, what colors are we seeing here? I think he's likable. He seems like a nice guy on this album. He seems like he's very forgiving. He seems like he's begging for forgiveness. It seems like he's searching for spiritual answers. It seems like he's open to the fact that he might not have found them. He sounds like somebody who's trying to keep his life together. He's somebody without bitterness. There's like no bitterness. Okay, there's a couple songs with like industry bitterness, but personal bitterness isn't really on here. So yes, this album is a great glob of an album, and it feels like there's different sides to it, but it doesn't quite feel bipolar. It doesn't quite feel fractured. It feels like one person who is probably the least unwell he has been since 808 and Heartbreak. What I think this album really is an extended meditation on who Kanye is in relation to 3 people. On one hand, it's Kanye the son, his relationship to Donda, his mother. On the other hand, it is Kanye, the husband or the ex-husband in relationship to Kim. And obviously, most importantly, as it is always most important on Kanye's albums, Kanye, the man, in relationship to himself and to God. Son, husband, man. This son is filled with loss, yearning to have a mother. You know, his last album, Jesus is King, was all about his father. I made a video about that up there. But here he's trying to figure out, what did he actually learn from Donda? And what did she teach him? As a husband or as an ex-husband, this is one of the weirdest divorce albums I think that's ever come out. I mean, Open Mike Eagle released, I believe, to be the definitive divorce album last year. It's great. But this one here, like, you think about who Kanye is, right? You think about, he always speaks his mind, and I gotta be me, and I'm the greatest genius, and he just gets divorced. And he is as sweet as a teddy bear cupcake. Imagine what a teddy bear cupcake is. That's how sweet Kanye is towards his ex-wife on this album. He's talking about giving her what she wants, avoiding the fights, protecting the kids. Like, he might not have been an exemplar husband, but he is showing himself off to be a very good ex-husband in this album. I think maybe it's because it's not quite real. I get the sense this is an album written by somebody who thinks that who thinks that he needs to say that he knows his marriage is over. But deep down in his heart, he doesn't think it is. That's what makes it such a strange divorce album. Now, I got divorced in 2013, 2014, so I can tell you, Kanye, you already made a great divorce album. Yeezus is a perfect divorce album. Blood on the Leaves, that last verse, got me through a lot of very dark and bitter times. Even though you hadn't lived with what you were singing about, it got me through those times. This album is not that. There's a little bit of the mention of excitement of having new sexual partners, which is one of the weird parts of getting divorced. But beyond that, it's just filled with hesitation and a lack of certainty that this marriage is over. One more thing. Son, husband. I'm not going to get super Freudian on you, but Donda is Kim in this album. Kim and Donda are the same person. They fill the same role in this artist's life. They are the representation of his better self. People who teach him through example. People who teach him through words, right? Like, I think the reason at the end of the last listening party that Kim was veiled was so that you could maybe think that she actually represented the ghost of his mother. And it wasn't a marriage, but it was a reuniting in the afterlife. I think these things are all possible. If you keep that in mind, Donda is Kim. The album takes on a whole nother shape, and it gets a lot more unified. And then finally, man in relation to himself. What kind of Christian is he? What is he as an American? What is he as a Black American? Like, who is the new me that he keeps talking about? Because all the way throughout this album, he keeps talking about the new me. And it's not bitter. It's just trying to be a better person, following the example of Donda Kim. Of course, there's God all over the place, right? But that's the real question about the Christianity of Kanye. It's always been a confusing thing. Like, who is God on this album? And I think one of the funniest things about Donda is pronoun confusion is everywhere. He talks about him and you and I and God. And it is not clear when he's talking about God or when he's talking about himself. And I'm not making some joke about, oh, he thinks he's God. I don't care about that. That's boring, okay? What I mean is that, like, I think that's on purpose, because what makes this an interesting Christian album, or an album about Christianity, is that it feels more real when it's like this, when it's not just a Christian album, when it's mixed in with the rest, and when it's clear that he's using religion to make himself a better person through self-reflection according to some kind of external code, right? Like, that's when religion is at its best. If religion were like that, there'd be no war. There'd be no holy wars. There'd be no murder in the name of any god, right? Just better yourself through self-reflection, through an external code. Too often it's used poorly as a defense of personal weakness and greed. And this album feels like a movement towards a more authentic religious self, which is maybe less based on Scripture, but I think maybe more based on what Scripture was actually trying to say. Sorry, my notes are getting all mixed up here. This is the most notes I've ever had for any of my videos. So I'll take a little sip here. Spiritually, when I think about this album, or when I try to put this album in greater musical context, the thing it reminds me the most of, this is, you're not expecting this, I hope, is Smile by the Beach Boys. If you don't know, Brian Wilson is the genius behind Beach Boys, and he released Pet Sounds, and it was a perfect album, the greatest album of all time, according to many people, probably according to me as well. And after that, it broke him. He just didn't know what to do. He tried to make this album, but he lost his mind. And this album, the most definitive version of the album, came out in 2013, 2013, 2014, 2015, like 60 years after he originally recorded it, 50 years after he recorded it. This album is composed of all the elements that make Smile. And he recorded them in the 60s, but actually trying to find a way to put them together created that album, which is, I think, similar to Donda in the way that like that album is a genius album as well, in some ways just as good as Pet Sounds, but it's like fractured. It's like partly about like American expansionism and then partly about health food. And it's this weird kind of like view into his mindset and where he was when he was trying to make this music. I think Donda has that same feeling of a great genius who is definitely tortured by his greatness, has expectations within himself to live up to, and is just struggling to get there and trying to get there. What makes this perhaps a different album than other Kanye albums, or a different emphasis on this album, stylistically, is how much he's using others to execute his vision. Now, I talked to my son the other day. He's in Alaska, but I talked to him on the phone for like 10 minutes. We talked about Donda for 9 of them. He said there's too many collaborators, that there's just too many other people, and he wants to hear more of Ye. And I hear that, but I think what Ye is doing is something great. He's helping to destroy the myth of the solitary genius, you know? I often compare Kanye to George Lucas, and part of what makes George Lucas so great is he's an amazing collaborator. He knows how to hire the right people, get them going in the right way, and then of course, George Lucas gets credit for Darth Vader, right? George Lucas created Darth Vader, and he did create Darth Vader. But Ralph McQuarrie designed the initial outfit, Ben Burt designed the sound effects, James Earl Jones did the voice, Dave Prowse did the physical acting. You put all those people together, you choose all those people together, and then you have Darth Vader. This album shows that that's the way that it is in music as well. A commenter on one of my channels, Yago Martinez Toyos, said that we could consider Kanye to be the greatest collaborator in music history. And I don't know if that's true, but I think he's in the conversation at least. And this album shows it, with the amount of co-producers, even more than in the past, and the amount of people he has shining on his album who aren't him. Because it's another one of these themes in that third thing, that man in relationship to himself, is he's fighting against his selfishness. And I think that's part of what all these collaborators are doing there. Also, there's a larger statement about hip-hop, I think. He says at some point in one of his lyrics about, how can you say we're in different lanes when we're in my car? Something to that effect. And I think that's what he's saying about hip-hop. Like, there can be trappers and underground rappers and mumble rappers and all these guys. But they're all in Kanye's car, at least on this album. And sort of more spiritually as well. They're all in Kanye's car stylistically based on his innovations, you know. But like, I love this idea that like, how can we say that Playboi Carti and Kanye and Griselda are doing different things when they're all in this car together? It is a unifying work in addition to being a work of a fractured genius. One of the themes, I am going to get to the album, by the way. I'm going to actually talk about the music, but there's just so much to this. Another one of the themes that I want to, it could probably be its own video, is themes of guilt and imprisonment. And I think one of the central questions that we need to ask ourselves is, do we feel empathy for the guilty? Okay? Like, somebody did something bad. Do we feel bad for them? Should we feel bad for them? Should they be forgiven? The Jesus aspect is important because Jesus forgives everybody, right? That's kind of his shtick, right? But our society doesn't really have a clear message on forgiveness. Sometimes you forgive, sometimes you don't. Unclear, depends who it is, depends how we do it. So we had this sort of theme of guilt and compassion and imprisonment and sort of spiritual imprisonment. I'm not going to say cancel culture, although it is a little bit about that, but it's more about societal shunning. Because I wouldn't say that Kanye has ever been canceled, but he has been shunned from society. And I think that's why he's showcasing a lot of people who have been shunned from society. But there's also marital jail, like going to the doghouse. The expression we use whenever usually a husband is in a fight with his wife and he loses, so he can't sleep in the bed, so he has to go sleep in the doghouse. We'll get more into that when we get to the song Jail. But it's a very huge theme here. And I think, much like our former president, Donald Trump, deserves more credit than he gets for the work that he did on prison reform, even though he didn't do enough, and he was a train wreck in every other aspect of this presidency. Kanye does deserve more credit for putting these issues forward. The prison industrial system is the #1 problem in our country, and it's not close. Kanye is talking about it, and he's doing it in a lot of subtle ways here, primarily focusing on the effects on the family of the imprisoned. Having such a high African American population in jail is not the problem of the people in the jail, it's the problem of the people outside of the jail. And what does that do to our society? God damn it, Kanye. How many albums are you gonna put in this album? Okay, I get it. You're so smart. And you're in jail and they're in jail. It's all imprisonment. It's exhausting. It's exhausting trying to go through this whole album. It's just so good. I'm so happy. Stylistically, hey, Kanye, do you hate drums? Did drums do something to you? Do you think that drums mean like the devil? That's my theory, is that there's like kind of a weird sort of Christian missionary bias against drumming because it was associated with like heathen behavior, and maybe that has this sort of like long-standing tradition where maybe in churches they try not to have drummers because it's seen as too sensual, too sexual, too wild. I'm going to show you right here. I counted up how much drums on Donda there are, and there's basically none. While talking to my son, I said this. He's like, yeah, but Jesus is King was the same way. I was like, hey. Oh, wait, you're right. Jesus is King is already showing that. Hot 97, the greatest radio station in the world, in New York, released a comment, or they made a video about this, making a guess that this is all about his stem player, that we're going to get a version of Donda with lots of drums that we can actually put into the songs. I don't know if it's true, but I think it's interesting. In the context of Kanye's albums, and I'm going to say something that's going to piss off a lot of Kanye fans. I don't consider Kanye's first 3 albums to be Kanye albums. I just don't. Like, they're great. I enjoy them, especially Graduation. I think they're great albums and I enjoy listening to them. But I consider Kanye to really have started in 808. That's really where his artistic vision took off. That's where his pattern of changing everything took off. That's where I think mature Kanye exists. Okay, I consider everything else to just be sort of juvenilia. Okay? This album is sort of a sequel to every single one of his previous albums. Obviously, we have JayZ on a song, and he says the return of the throne, so maybe it's a return to watching the throne. That's the least of that. It's definitely Yeezus Part 2 at times, with its instrumentation and how raw it is. It's definitely Pablo Part 2 at times because of the way it was rolled out, and the uncertainty, and the length, and the craziness. It's definitely Jesus is King Part 2 because of the religion of it. It's definitely Twisted Fantasy Part 2 because of the way the guests are used so well and so effectively. And most of all, it's 808 and Heartbreak Part 2. He's talking about a breakup and the death of his mom. What was 808 and Heartbreak about? You might as well call this 809 and Heartbreak. This all leads, before I actually get to breaking down the album, to the crisis of Wednesday. So I'm recording this on a Thursday, releasing it on a Friday. I'm going somewhere over Labor Day, so. Where on Wednesday, I was like, oh no, I don't like the album. I don't like it. I was driving to work. I've been listening to it 3 or 4 times a day since Sunday, and I'm driving my way to work, and there's like this segue of songs. I'm like, I don't like it. I don't like it. Damn it, I don't. Like, I don't like it. I just don't like it. It's just bad. Kanye's bad now. He sucks now. Everybody else was right. I'm wrong. I hate it. I keep listening throughout the rest of the day. By the end of the day, I do like it. By the end of the day, I am happy. By the end of the day, I forgave those songs. But this points to the problem of doing a review at all. Another one of my commenters, Tom Ross TV Raw, says, quote, anyone leaving a full review of this album already is full of ish. LOL. The album is 27 songs long. No way you digested this album enough to critique responsibly. To that I say, yep, you're right. This is an irresponsible review. Because it's a draft. Every review of a Kanye album, for me, is a draft. Okay? Like, it changes so much. And that's true for all my favorite artists. Okay? Like, you want me to tell you what I think about Revolver? Like, are you crazy? What I think about Revolver changes every year. You know what I mean? So, like, yes, it's too soon. And, you know, in case you don't know this, if this is your first time watching my channel, congratulations making it this far. I'm not going to give you a number. I'm not going to give you a grade. I'm not going to say A+, 7 out of 10, right? I'm not going to say that. I'm just giving you my thoughts. It's never too early to give thoughts. I will know in December, hopefully, where it sits in my ranking of Kanye's albums. And just to give you, those of you who've been sitting around, my fancy thoughts and what am I talking about, I'll do a little ranking for you just for fun. This is my current ranking of Kanye's albums. I mean his real albums, 808 and after. Okay? And you're going to hear how low Donda is on this ranking. Starting with number 1. Yeezus, Fantasy, Kids See Ghost, 808 and Heartbreak, Jesus is King, Watch the Throne, Life of Pablo, Donda, and Ye. I put it as my second least favorite. I would be shocked if Donda was not in my top 3 by the end of the year. I'd be shocked. I think I'm gonna get around to it. I think the songs that you're gonna hear that I don't like very much, I think I'm gonna like them. I think I'm gonna come around to it. I think I'm going to understand it. But let's get back to the thoughts, okay? So I'm gonna go through the album. Normally, I take one song as an example song from the album to show off to you, but I'm not gonna do that this time. I just wanna get into the album. I wanna start off with the first track, the Donda Chant. Kanye tells you who he is. He says what he's doing. He's not that mysterious, right? You think he's mysterious because you don't believe him, okay? You want to know if he's an avant-garde dude. He starts off his entire album with the word Donda repeated by a female, not by his mother, 60 times. It's very avant-garde, and it sets you in the mood. And you cannot underestimate this. You have to listen to this. You have to listen to this every time you listen to the album. It's your responsibility, okay? You cannot skip this. Think about the person who you lost the most, okay? Think about the power of their name. Victoria. 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 If I kept going, I would start crying. My mom died almost 5 years ago. I think about her all the time. I'm gonna talk more about that at the end of this album. What is he doing? Like this weird like meditation, like the word starts to lose meaning. You sort of dissociate from the meaning of the word and it's popping in. Donda, 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 Donda. And why do you especially have to listen to Donda? What happens with Donda? What comes after the last Donda? You tell me what the music does. After the last Donda, what is the sound that comes out of your speakers? Donda. The beginning of Jail is an extension of the Donda chant. Donda, Donda, wow, Donda. I'm sure this is on purpose, and it's an amazing trick. I'm also going to do a drum report for every song. Are there drums? Half drums, meaning like very little drumming, like either in half the song or just like a bass drum and a clap or something like that, or are there full drums? Donda chant, no drums. We then go into Jail, an amazing opener, and it makes you wonder like, what is this about, right? This is about the guilty. People who are in jail, people who have been shunned by society, people who are in the doghouse. Musically, it is the power of Kanye that he made such an amazingly catchy song out of nothing. Just, well, Donda, Donda, It's so catchy. This chorus, guess who's going to jail tonight? The way the things are sung, the way the verses come in, it is just an amazing example of how Kanye can change culture. We are going to hear other songs like Jail in the next 10 years, and when we do, we're going to be like, oh yeah. Super strong echoes all over the place. The verse seems to be exclusively about his divorce. Now, for the remixes, I'm going to review the original and the remix at the same time, and I'm going to pick one as the winner for my definitive canon version of Donda. Okay, hopefully that lawnmower. Problems with being a suburban YouTuber. So in Jail Part 1, we have the JayZ verse, and it's interesting, you know, like. And I need to remind the world that I have made a top 5 MCs video, and I put JayZ at number 1. So, I'm not making fun of JayZ here, but he's not at his best. He's being very clever. He's like, but the thing is, he's being a little too clever. He's being like, okay, I'm gonna do a verse with Kanye. Let me kind of like do all these clever things. I'm gonna make sure I reference as many Kanye songs as possible. You know, On Sight, Hell of a Life, Yikes. Like he's like going through a whole list of songs. And it's cool that he's matching the Christianity and the themes of Christianity in Kanye. I'd say that's more interesting. But it just feels a little bit too much like you know how he wrote Bugs Bunny's raps for Space Jam? This feels a little bit like he's in that mode. Like, I have to write a Kanye verse. What do I have to say about Kanye? And it's clever and it's good, and I love his slow cadence, but it doesn't quite land for me. I do love it when he says reset, because that's just beautiful. Which then leads to the drums. Drum report. I guess we'll call this half drums. There's no drums in the beginning of the song, and then when the song's over, there are some drums. Some Phil Collins-esque drums, right? Like, why are they separate? Are we supposed to put them together in our mind? When you listen to Jail, do you hear them together? Yay. Jail Part 2. Jail versus Jail Part 2. Jail Part 2 is absolutely the winner. I think the version with Da Baby absolutely is the better version. And first of all, I need to say, before I go further, if I could choose, I would take Chris Brown, Da Baby, and Marilyn Manson completely off this project. But it's interesting because it makes you think about, like, can this song be about anybody who has run up against authority and been guilty and had to face the consequences? I like this verse more. First of all, he's just hungrier. It's just his verse is amazing. I mean, I don't know Da Baby particularly well. I did review his album years ago. I really love his flow. I love his rhythm, the way he keeps up. And he's really like a hungry rapper making a great verse. But like JayZ, if JayZ had released this in 1998, it would have been perfect when he was still under investigation for stabbing. I forget what he was under investigation for. You tell me in the comments, right? But it just doesn't quite match the spirit of the song. So, in my headcanon, Jail 1, that's on the outtakes. Jail 2 is the official version. Then we get to Godbreathed. Godbreathed is I Am a God Part 2. I mean, the boom, 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 boom. I am a God. God breathe on this. God breathe on this. It feels so much like an echo. But this is the thing. This is way more challenging. Way more minimal. Way more repetitive. He's not screaming, but he's like, there's chanting, and there's thinking about God, and the meditative quality of the album, where it starts off with Donda, and you can't skip Donda. Donda, 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 Victoria. Like, the meditative quality of the album really comes through. This God breathe on this. I know God breathe on this. I know God breathe on this. Just this, like, just ridiculous repetition. And then we have this pulsing, and we have the addition of Vori. There's a term we use in my family, and this is why I'm happy that this is not something I've written, it's something that I speak, because I cannot type these words. Vori is what we call in our family a rapper. So that's like any one of the new rappers who uses auto-tune and raps in a fairly emotional, sing-songy way. We just call them like they'll be listening to the radio and be like, oh, this is another rapper, because that's just the sort of the initial sound. You know? So Vori he's sort of the unsung star of this album. Like, he kind of reminds me of like Nate Dogg on Chronic. You know what I mean? Like, just sort of like an unsung hero who helps to really set this tone. There's a sincerity and a deepness and an injuredness in his voice that's just great. That goes beyond the and like the way he comes on the song, the way the song changes. I mean, Kanye is really on some avant-garde stuff here. He's really like, it just changes, and then Kanye comes in, there's this chanting in the background, and then Kanye just says, God will solve it all for me, trust man, he's a failure, trust God and he'll hail you, fall far too often, yeah, call God but not enough. Like, you really feel like this spiritual journey. I feel it really honestly in this song. And then of course he always has to have his Kanye goofiness. Dustin is a Hoffman. So is Philip Seymour. And I just love Vori coming back. I love the way Vori sounds at the end. This is a great example of why you need to listen to these albums multiple times. The first time I heard this song, I was like, oh, great. Kanye's just gone full blah, and it's just going to be blah, blah, blah for the whole album. And I'm so sick of blah. And why is Kanye lowering himself? You listen to this verse. You listen to it with headphones. This ending verse with Vori. Talk about angels talking to me, telling me it's okay not to be okay. I got therapy at 3. And I'm recording this at like 1:45, so hopefully I don't miss the beginning of my therapy, but I can tell you, if you have a therapist tells you what this angel is telling Vori, what Kanye is telling himself, and what Kanye is telling you, okay? It's okay to not be okay. What do you need in a divorce? You need to be told it's okay to not be okay. What do you need in grief? It is okay to not be okay. What message do you really need God to tell you? Or a therapist? Or your mother? Or your wife? Or your friend? It's okay to not be okay. God damn it, Kanye. Initially, I thought Vori was just a budget Ty Dolla $ign, but I now realize they do things differently. And of course, the song ends with Kanye basically chopping up chants, right? He's kind of like doing the old Kanye thing, but with oh. It's great. Drum report, no drums. Just rhythmic bass. Only 4 songs in. Another great track, Off the Grid, with Playboi Carti and 5Yo Foreign. Just a great beat. I especially love the hawk sounds. We have a lot of hawks in my neighborhood. Just very cool and futuristic. And what I love is that it's like a dirty, like Yeezus style song. But everything that he does for his kids. And you know, I got 2 kids, and everything I do is for my kids. Even these videos are for the kids, you know? Like I love the idea that he's expressing all these feelings where he used to express them before in like this weird, like narcissistic, angry, self-hating place. He's actually talking about his kids. He's very clearly inspired by Carti's style. I've come to love Playboi Carti, although he's not really on this song. I mean, it's weird because part of what Playboi Carti made so popular, or popularized, he didn't invent, I don't think, but it's just like sounding like you weren't ready. Like, okay, tell me when, you know, kind of, he's a little bit like that, not entirely. Like, tell me when you're gonna start. Oh, we already started. Oh, we already started? So should I start like singing or like doing raps or something? Yeah, no, we've already been recording it. Okay, we're done. Like, you just kind of get that sense. And 5Yo Foreign, a lot of people I've seen comment on this. He just has a great verse. It reminds me a little bit of like Nicki Minaj's verse on Monster, just in a way where you just hear somebody just absolutely killing a verse. It's just like, he changed up his style, gets kind of like drill-like, the drum beat changes underneath. He just sounds super awesome. My favorite word on the entire album, and my wife's favorite word on the entire album, is chimney. Got my chimney back there. Just the way he says chimney, an amazing verse. And you know, it might be the best verse on the album. If it weren't for Kanye's verse on Off the Grid, I'm calling it. Off the Grid is Kanye's best rap ever. This verse, in my opinion, is him at his peak. Okay? You get mad at me? Tell me. Actually, don't get mad at me. Tell me, what is your favorite Kanye verse? What do you think is better than Off the Grid? Because this is the thing. Right before he starts the final verse of Off the Grid, he's doing the chorus. And he does the thing where it sounds like he's out of breath. It's like, Off the Grid, I have to believe it. More cardio, less weights, you know, like he sounds like out of breath. And then he just starts going, and the beat, and he speeds up, and he slows down when necessary, and he builds up all this drama and slows down, and the drums get taken out. Help myself out of selfishness, delivering heavenly messages just for the hell of it. Like, the sounds come out, and they come back in, and then there's this, like, quiet part. And, like, he gives a little space. And then he starts going again, and the drums come in. It's the greatest thing. And why is it my favorite Kanye verse? Because Kanye made it his best verse by producing it so well. So that you see there, the bestie, I think I see Messi. The money, like he just, you know, I mean, what can hip hop do, right? Like, what can it do to your spirit, you know? Like that part where the drums come back in and he starts going again with that rat-a-tat rhythm, it is just absolutely awesome. Drum report, full drums. And then it goes immediately into Hurricane. And I love a good album where you connect two songs, where you hear 80 degrees. Like, I hear it immediately the second that the song ends, even before it happens. His voice just comes through so clearly. He's just great. I mean, The Weeknd, I wish he was used more often. He's probably too expensive for rappers to use, or he probably has too high standards. But he's just a great force here. Just the way his voice can just cut through anything. And then Kanye does some cool, like, weird chopping up with the Sunday service sounds and, like, things cutting up. And it's just the way that Kanye can do, right? He just, like, make all these weird sounds. And hey, Kanye, you know what you could have done? You could have made a pop song. You had Lil Baby, huge rapper. You had Weeknd, huge singer. You had you. Everyone's on you. But you didn't do that. You didn't put drums on this song. You got organs and better rapping from Lil Baby. But, like, it's not really a pop song. The restraint, the decisions that he makes are not based on commercial decisions. I know he's a billionaire. I get it. I know he made, whatever, $10 million with his listening parties. He makes art. He makes money off the art. He doesn't make art to make money off the art. It is just a good reflection on our culture that we choose to give him money to support his art, okay? The fact that he's so rich reflects well on humanity, okay? Because he never decides to do the thing that will make him money. He decides to get two of the hottest people in music and make this fairly avant-garde, beautiful song, you know? I really like Lil Baby's line. He has this one line in the middle, bro told me to wait to beat the game, about being on defense. I just love that idea, like being on defense, which is a pretty non-standard reaction from a rapper. Cuts out totally on the bridge. Or Weeknd just sounds like an angel. He just sounds like an angel. But it's great because he's such a tortured character, and you know that from his music, that he sounds like a tortured angel, you know? Which fits the theme of the album. God, what if they did a whole album together? Ooh, get Daft Punk back. That'd be good. And then Kanye has another great verse. Back-to-back songs. His little trick is going, I was out for myself, Just great usage and talking about the selfishness and talking about his failings, referring to himself as the busiest loser. I can tell you, as somebody who's very busy, whenever I feel down on myself, I'm going to think this all the time. Like, who's the busiest loser? And he's like fiending for true love. That's what he says. Ask him, who do you love? Hard to find what the truth is, but the truth was that the truth sucked. Like, the reality of divorce is that the reality is that it sucked. You know, divorce is the death of an ideal. All right, because marriage is sort of an ideal concept. I'm getting way over my skis here with philosophy. It's fine. I don't ski anyway. Like, it's the death of an ideal. The death of an idea of what love can be. So, like, divorce is often the truth. The truth is people aren't compatible, they can't make it work, right? And the truth suck. Back to back to back. Praise God. My favorite song on the album. If I had a stamp, it would be this. I don't have a stamp for this album. This is my absolute favorite song. Starts off with Donda coming back, actually hearing her voice, talking about people being the son slappers, I assume meaning her son getting slapped. And then Kanye mixes her saying, into the night, into the chorus. Travis Scott, the king of blitter, is on here and just blittering so unbelievably well. Baby Keem, also blittering, but he's like, the thing about blitter is it has all this potential for dynamics, so he can like kind of like rap hard and then sing high and then sing low, and there's a playfulness and a range to Blah, which I am way too easy, like I was way too easy to dismiss before when I just heard it. Baby Keem's fascinating because it sounds like he can't even like get started. He's just like Tame Impala, but then he actually gets started, and by the end it sounds like he's almost like speaking in tongues. Maybe my favorite biblical line on this album: treat your Lord and Savior like renter's insurance. Awesome. And just get it right, and he's getting it all up there, and then we get to the chorus. And the chorus, to praise God, is my favorite part of the entire album. We go and praise God our way out the grave, dog, living, speaking, praise God, walking out the graveyard, back to life. The rhythms that I didn't quite nail, the way he does that is just so strong. I serve, follow your word, see with new sight, and then his mom comes in to say, into the night. This is as good as Kanye's production ever gets. Remember how I said this is my second least favorite Kanye album? It just jumped, okay? I think it just jumped over Life of Pablo. God damn, I love this album. Drum report, full drums. 3 great songs with drums. I don't know what to tell you, bud. Next song, Jonah, sees Vori come back and Lil Durk. And what I like about this song is I listen to the album all the time, obviously. And my wife, the Dr. and Mrs., I say that because she has a doctorate and she's my wife. She is the Dr. and Mrs. You know, she likes Kanye and she's learning a lot from me, but she doesn't naturally like Kanye. And so I was going to skip this song. She's like, no, I like this song. So this is my wife's song, this one, Jonah. I just always think, you know, because I just wasn't really into the blah, blah, going on here with Vori and Lil Durk, both going blah, blah. But Vori's just great. The way he sings is just so special and so hurt. And I like how Lil Durk is like very consciously referencing Kanye and JayZ, sort of paying deference to the past. And this really neat idea of Kanye finding Chicago rappers and bringing them up, you know? I mean, it's not like, Kanye will never do better. He can never hope for better than Chance on Ultralight Beam from Life of Pablo, you know? But I like that he's still trying. And I guess the thing I didn't like about this song is I'm not that big fan of Kanye's style of kind of doing like that over and over again, but it fits well enough. And when you listen to the song 10, 15 times, you just find yourself waiting for the chorus. This really blew up chorus, you know? Where do you from me? Where do you from me? Drum report, beeps, and then drums all the way in the back. This is what I call half drums, okay? And the reason this is important is that hip-hop is mostly beats and rhymes. And drums are so important to hip-hop that we call all music in hip-hop beats, okay? Like, when the Rolling Stones put together music and lyrics, they call it music and lyrics. They don't call them beats and rhymes. It would be like if Kanye did an entire album and didn't rhyme. Jesus Christ, he's going to do that. I know he's going to do that. Okay. It's like he's actually destroying what makes hip-hop hip-hop. And you don't even really notice it because the rhythms are so strong everywhere else. Like this whole song, beep, that's the rhythm. That's the drum beat, beep. Might as well be taking EKG. Okay. Another great banging track, kind of like back up a little bit less bullet than the rest. It's just kind of a very Yeezus-y styling track, like Yeezus sounding track. It's a little bit, thematically, it's not quite as interesting. It seems like he's just still angry at Drake. I don't care. I like Drake. I like Kanye. Well, I like Drake. I love Kanye. It seems like it's kind of like against the media. The same way I feel about Morrissey is the same way I feel about Kanye. Like, the less you complain about people, the more interesting you are. But still, I really, really, really like Kanye's verse here. I love how he's going at a certain pace and then he slows it down. See me in person, I look like a ghost. My dogs, Bo and Toby, they both have, their faces keep getting whiter, just like my beard. And it's like, see me in person, they look like a ghost. And whenever I see them waiting at the window, they look like a ghost. I see Toby, I go, see him in person, he looks like a ghost. And then we have Lil Yachty. And Lil Yachty, you know, kind of hit or miss. One of the kings of Breda. But he's really interesting. Like, I don't know if it's, okay, please tell me in the comments. Is Kanye getting the most out of Breda rappers? Or is this always there? Like, is that how good Travis Scott always is? Is this how good Lil Yachty always is? And I just needed Kanye to see it? Let me know. Because just the way that he says, everything I do is solely for the broken youth. It's just beautiful. Ruga comes in, a beautiful move here. Apparently, Lil Durk and Ruga are in different Chicago street gangs. Having them next to each other on a track, I think is a very intentional message, and it's great. Hopefully we'll keep them out of goddamn Trap Lord Ross's videos. I'm sorry. I watched a lot of Trap Lord Ross's videos, but I don't like the gang stuff. It feels a little too exploitative. But it's nice hearing Ruga on here as well. It's funny because, like, I have trouble understanding the difference between Da Baby and Lil Baby because I'm old. And the key is that one of them is more bleh than the other. And that's actually the case with Ruga and Lil Durk as well. Ruga is just more bleh than the other. Drum report, no drums. It's like a banging track. It's like a super awesome track. It's like a track you can dance to. Okay, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. No drums. Unless I'm not hearing them. Unless my fader's broken. Then we have Okay Okay Part 2. So Okay Okay Part 2 has this addition. It subtracts Lil Yachty, who I like, and adds Shinasea, who's a reggae, dancehall reggae star. And I have to say, I like this version better. Primarily because I love how, I think I could do a whole video about Kanye and reggae. Like how sparingly he uses dancehall reggae and how well he uses it. And there's just one part in this where it's okay, it's not okay. And then she says like, okay, it's not okay. And then she does this like, oh, okay. It's just this ridiculously satisfying little vocal note. And I love the way this sounds. So I'm going to say Okay Part 2 is the official Okay Okay in the Skye version. Then there's a bad EP in the middle of this album. That's what I said on Wednesday. Dark Wednesday, when I didn't like it. The next 4 tracks, like Junior, I just don't... He's mad at other people again. I don't miss... It reminds me a lot of the song Jumpman, which I really don't like, by Kanye. It just feels a little too bitter, a little too silly. Not enough to the beat. It's like organ and booms. It's futuristic. I might like it in the future. But Cardi's verse just gets kind of weird, and the sounds behind the words. And it's like, I just don't really like it. It's just too aggravating, a little too annoying. Drum report, half drums, super minimal 808s, mostly bass, and the drums cut out for most of the song. Here's a weird twist. Do you know what song I do like? Junior Part 2. It fixes most of the mistakes of Junior Part 1 because it adds Ty Dolla $ign and it extends Playboi Carti's verse so he actually gets started. And Playboi Carti talks about being in the Mercedes Stadium, recording the verse in Mercedes Stadium. The whole album, I'm sitting there like, I know he recorded a lot of this in the last month. I'm so happy to hear it, you know? He says, like, where's my mattress? It just must have been the funniest thing, right? Because, like, everyone's just sleeping on the floor, you know? And, you know, when it comes to hip-hop songs, when it says featuring, the number one thing I want to see is Lil Wayne. The number 2 thing I want to see is Ty Dolla $ign. I love it when Ty Dolla $ign does features, and he seems to be having the most fun I've ever heard him have. He's like singing and rapping and like just doing really weird, cool things with his voice. I love this version of the song. Junior Watanabe Part 2 is actually a good song. I think it's a much better song than Junior Part 1. Believe What I Say is my least favorite song on the album. I think the Lauryn Hill sample is out of place. It's the most direct message to Kim. It feels like it's a song sort of written to please people who read tabloids. I think it should have been a single, like Only One, which is a song I love, or All Day, which is a song that I love. But just, or that song with Lil P. What was that song that he did? I love it. You know, that weird song. Like, just put it aside. Let it be somewhere else. You know, I don't need to hear about don't let your lifestyle drag you down. I just don't particularly like the song very much. I like hearing Buju Banton, you know. Again, I just said I like the reggae, so I like Buju Banton in this. But just the rest of the song, it's just, it's too clear. It's too nice. It's too straightforward. It just doesn't, just to me, it doesn't stylistically fit. Check back on me in a couple months. I might change my mind. Drum report, just 808s, and every once in a while, a cassava sound. Like just a bass, doom, and tss. I'm going to count that as half drums. 24 is my favorite of these bad 4 songs with the Sunday Service Choir. It's just really cool, just chopping up the choir, slowing it down. He's famous for the chipmunk sound. What do you call it when you slow it down? I'm going to call it Andre the Gianting. A lot of development that's happening here. You just have to listen carefully to this song. And when it switches to the God's Not Finished, like when he's singing, I know you're alive, God's not finished. It's an actually edifying spiritual moment. So 24 actually is a really great song. there goes my dislike of this little section. Drum report, no drums. My daughter asked me this morning, does Kanye hate drums? No, he loves drums. Remote control. It's predictable. Everybody knows it's the worst song on the album. Nobody doesn't know that. Everybody knows Remote Control is the worst song on the album. It's just like his weird, annoying singing style just cranked up to 10. The most pronoun confusion. Like, he's got a remote control. Is he talking about himself? Is he talking about God? Is he complaining about technology? I hate this song, but I love the whistle. Little note in there. I can't whistle, turns out. Young Thug, another one of the kings of Breda, is actually pretty good on here. Emotionally vulnerable in a powerful way. He does a lot. He uses the dynamism of the Breda to go lots of different places. In the middle of his verse, there's this like weird vocoder sound. Damn it. I hate remote control, but I just listed 3 things that are very interesting, engaging, and like what I do like. And of course, it ends with I am the glob, glob, glob. And if you haven't seen this already, this was made by Stella Karasu, friend of the channel, actually inspiration for the channel. And for Christmas a couple years ago, made this video game donkey inspired sweatshirt for me. Donkey made a video making fun of Kanye and Kanye's merch, and so she made this for me. This is one of my prize items. You can't have it, okay? You might have Yeezy Mark 1 and Mark 2 and original Air Jordans, but do you have the Shadow Jesus sweatshirt? I do love that Kanye evidently watched Video Game Donkey's parody of The Watching Party. That Donkey quoted this weird Christian thing from 2013, and then in reaction, Kanye quoted Donkey. I think it's beautiful. It's the way our culture should be working, where arguably the best comic on YouTube and the best artist in music are collaborating, sort of making fun of each other. And also, does that mean that Kanye is starting to get a sense of humor about himself? That's the one thing he doesn't have, is a sense of humor about himself. Drum report, full drums, some development. Then things pick right back up again with the song Moon. Just what the hell's happening here? I mean, when I first heard this, I was like, we're just lucky to be alive at the same time Kanye is, These ethereal voices, this Don Toliver singing, and then Kid Cudi coming in just perfect, And I don't know the words. I don't know the words to Moon. And I don't want to know the words. I looked up Genius for the rest of the album, but I don't want to know. Moon. I'm just happy having it just be sounds. We're getting right back into that transcendental state that this album is sort of trying to put you in from the very beginning. Donda, 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 Victoria, Donda. And just wonderful. Drum report, no drums. Heaven and Hell was an early favorite of mine. Just this cool, old school, 20th century school band sample. Goofy lyrics, Legos to Legos, but still like he's like spiritually defiant side, but it's the dynamism where he's like starts rapping and he's rapping with the keyboards and he's doing kind of a tennis rhythm where it's like ba-dum, ba-dum, dum-dum, 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 and then it gets slow and then it cuts out and then the choir comes in, and if the choir doesn't get you, okay, that's fine with me. You don't have to get gotten, okay? If you can hear the point where the choir comes in behind his verse, where the verses are just slightly behind the beat, just a little bit behind the beat, I don't know what to tell you. That is one of my favorite things that has happened in music this lifetime. I absolutely love it. He then jumps in with the Let It Drrr, which I think is a very obvious reference to Cudi, who was on the previous song. Drum report, half drums, a bass drum and a clap. Next song is Donda, and this is the biggest loss, is there was a verse on here with Pusha T and Kanye. But you know who had the most interesting thing to say about this? Pusha T. This is about power, money, influence, and taste. Nothing more, nothing less. Watching you joystick the culture makes us all proud. Continue to do things your way. Congrats, I'm honored to have been part of the process. #Donda. That's just it. Pusha T gets it. You know, Pusha T is, you know, one of the smartest rappers, I think. He's just very, very, very smart. You know, I mean, he mostly just raps about selling crack, but it's very clear that there's a lot going on, right, behind the eyes, you know? And this just really shows it. He gets what Kanye is doing, even if it means his awesome verse is gone. And why is his verse gone? Because it didn't really have to do with it, because what we needed to hear Donda talking, getting sort of approval from the grave. Drum report, no drums, just vocals and piano. Is the kingdom and the power and the glory why Kanye ain't scared. Next song is Keep My Spirit Alive. Hey, one more thing about Kanye's ability to write music. He writes so many catchy songs that have no right being as catchy as they are. Just saying the words, keep my spirit alive. I just want to sing them. And as I've already established a couple times on this video, I can't sing. Keep my spirit alive. It's just because I need to drink more coffee. So how does this song do it? You know, I review almost every Griselda album that comes out. Every album by West Side Gun, by Conway the Machine, and Benny the Butcher, right? They come out with an album like a couple times a month, okay? I'm a huge Griselda fan. They're on this. My favorite underground rappers and my favorite mainstream rapper are getting together. And what's my favorite part of the song? Some weird singing dude, Skye. Who is this guy? You know, like that's the other part of the collaborator. You just go, who is this guy? Who is Skye? I don't know. I get it. I'm an old man and I should need to know more about the culture. I accept it, okay? I literally am a full-time French professor, by the way. So, like, it's not like I have all the time in the world to just focus on music. So thank you, Kanye, for curating this right here. Just the way he sings, he has a super weird, beautiful, haunting voice. And what he's singing is great. My life is in his hands, so I don't stress, I pray and strategize. That sounds like good advice. West Side is great. My last video was about West Side Gun's most recent album. I think he might be the closest thing to Kanye in music, besides Kanye, because he has a similar understanding of like art and fashion and how it relates to music and how to sort of curate other artists. And he just has kind of a standard verse about beating a jail charge and being rich. But it's interesting because he's somebody who's guilty and has not been punished. Conway, who got shot in the face, just tells his story about getting through. And then we get into Kanye's verse, which is just beautiful. The way he says, if they don't turn you into a little Gotti, they drain all the strength from your little body. It's just beautiful. A weird thing where Royce da 5'9" like sort of talks about, like jumps in and does some of the lines as well. It seems like the song is mostly about being black in America. It's about wealth and equality. Many references to Wakanda. Frequent Kanye collaborator, who might be beefing with now, I don't know, Virgil Abloh, has a beautiful piece with the Black Panther logo. It just says Wakanda never, right? Because Wakanda is a great ideal, but the world has never let a place like Wakanda exist because of racism. So I think it's one of the more political songs on this album, kind of secretly, because it just has this keep my spirit alive, you know? This is the problem with all the Jesus stuff, is all the tracks blend together. It's like, what's that song called? Jesus is God. What's that song called? God is Jesus. What's that song called? Is God Jesus? What's that song called? Is Jesus God? You know, like Jesus God is. Like there's a certain extent to which there's a problem. Drum report, full on verse, none on the chorus. We'll call that half drums, because the chorus is the heart of the song. The next song is called Jesus Lord. A real standout beat. I mean, all these beats are co-produced by other people, but here we have Swizz Beatz and Gesaffelstein working together. Gesaffelstein, one of the architects of Yeezus. I love Gesaffelstein. A real standout beat. These synthesizer blares, this like dissonance, and Kanye's verse. I've heard some comments about the second part of Kanye's verse, which is great. But the first verse is really what interests me the most, where he's really giving a portrait of his life. You know, like where he is now. I've been swimming on the deepest end. It's just drugs and ain't no hugs, ain't no love there. Actually talking about suicide. He talks about the nightmare of his childhood and moving into the hood. You want your dreams to come true, but I have nightmares because if that don't come to life, I might not be right here. Been in the dark so long, I don't know if there's light here. I'm just reaching for the stars like Buzz Lightyear. And now I'm light years ahead of those nightmares. I dreaded those night terrors when the night clears. And if I talk to Christ, can I bring my mother back to life? And if I die tonight, will I see her in the afterlife? But back to reality where everything's a tragedy. So we're like, all these things are happening. 808 and Heartbreak Part 2. The reality, the ideal of the marriage is over. The mom who helps him is dead. Back to reality, everything's a tragedy, but still he manages to work through these nightmares. That's really, to me, that's the strongest part. The second part of the verse, he tells a whole story about a family that's torn apart by murder and drugs, and it's beautiful. It reminds me a lot of The Message, Grandmaster Flash. I think it's Melly Mel did that verse. Jesus Christ. If I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, please cancel me forever. I believe it's Melly Mel who does that verse. But if it's not, you'll have to correct me. A child is born in no state of mind, blind to the eyes of mankind, right? I'm wondering here, in this story, it ends with somebody putting a gun on somebody saying, are you ready to meet Christ? And what I think happens is he doesn't shoot him, that there's just a light, and that they're both saved by Jesus. Or does he kill him and the light is the person going up to heaven? I don't know. Jay Electronica comes on, and when I heard that he used the word Rothschild, and the first time I reviewed it, I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to tackle the question of anti-Semitism and people who get super mad at me for using the word anti-Semitism, whatever it is. But it's not about that at all. It's actually a reference to Thelonious Monk and to his ex-girlfriend. So fortunately, there's nothing, as far as I can tell, questionable in this verse. As I hope you know, I love Jay Electronica, but I do not always politically agree with his take on certain issues. But it's just a great political verse about reckoning. I think this goes really well with Keep My Spirit Alive. It's a very sort of politically engaged song. It's kind of wrapped into this Donda soup, this Donda glob, 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 glob. And in some ways it's like an interfaith service too, because he talks about like his faith and he talks about Jesus, but he does what Jews and Muslims, good Jews and good Muslims who believe in Christianity and take all faith seriously, like good Christians take other faiths seriously, like just as a prophet, like just describes Jesus as a prophet, not necessarily as the savior or whatever. There's kind of a funny, if I was a more attentive religious scholar, I would find a lot of interest in this verse. And then it ends with Larry Hoover Jr. So Kanye, when he went to go talk to Trump, was trying primarily to free Larry Hoover Jr. Larry Hoover Sr. Larry Hoover, or Jr., doesn't matter. I'll just call him Larry Hoover. He was trying to free Larry Hoover, who was the leader of a Chicago street gang and who was almost freed, but then was accused of calling the shots from prison. And the thing about this is this. Okay, the song "The Hurricane" by Bob Dylan. About like how Reuben the Hurricane Carter was falsely imprisoned. It turns out he actually did it. Okay, probably Larry Hoover. I don't know much about the case, but it seems like he probably should be in jail. I don't know. It seems, based on what I've read, and maybe I'm just reading the wrong information. Please, and I'm not joking, please tell me how I'm wrong. I mean it. Like if you could write a long paragraph about how my interpretation is poisoned by false media, please tell me. But as far as I can tell, if anybody belongs in jail, somebody who runs a very violent and bloody street gang that's hurt many people probably belongs in jail. But the thing about this is that it's not actually about Larry Hoover. It's about his son who's leaving the message. It's about the families that are destroyed. It's about all the people. It's about, and I'm going to quote the album here, the conditions of the capitalist society are what made him and what made the kids today. I claimed Jesus is King as an anti-capitalist album, and I'm probably going to claim the same thing about this album as well. The way that money has hurt African-American communities, and one of the primary ways is in the prison industrial complex, and that is in this song, and it is in this album, and that is what Kanye is doing, okay? He's not doing something else. He's not talking about Larry Hoover. He's talking about the entire country and the situation that we are in. Drum report, a bass and claps. Half drums. Jesus is Lord Part 2 is not as good as Part 1. I like the locks. I just don't need to hear the song any longer. Get to the song New Again, another kind of throwback song. This is kind of like Believe What I Say, but just, I don't know, just better. I like the production of his voice, the echoes. I like how it kind of cools down behind the beat. I like his kind of like, his verses aren't great, like he rhymes Thursday with Thursday. I mean, he used to at least rhyme Thursday with birthday. But it's a weird fractured song because on one hand, he's looking to be new again through God. On the other hand, he's just happy to find like a new woman, right? Like how excited he is. Like the experience of being with another woman is the most insane out-of-body experience. Or is he talking about some kind of religious rapture? I don't know. But great development after the first chorus where the drums come out, before the second chorus and the choir comes up. And then we have the super confusing thing, what they vandalize, he'll evangelize. God doesn't evangelize. God can't spread the word. Evangelists are humans who spread the word. So he's not talking about God, he's talking about himself. What they vandalize, he, Ye, will evangelize. Drum report, bass and claps, just have a half. That then leads to Tell Division with Pop Smoke. I don't really know what this is doing here. I understand Kanye produced this, but the Pusha T verse and the Kanye lines that were on the original song aren't on there. I think it reminds me a little bit of On the Life of Pablo, how Designer, the song Panda, was just in the middle of one of his songs. But it's fine. Drum report, like a weird scratch. We'll call that a half drums. Lord, I Need You. I used to hate the song. So sick of all these vaguely religious titles, and then I've come to love it. This weird underwater pitched sample. This production is just outstanding, amazing, bizarre. Like these pitched up and down gospel voices coming in and out. And just like, Lord, I need you, wrap your arms around me. It's just a beautiful way of singing. Gentle, almost cheesy pianos. One of the most clear messages. Just how is he going to grow through divorce? How is divorce going to make him a better person? Divorce made me a better person. I'm going to give up on doing things my way. It does feel like a letter to Kim, but it feels like a lot more heartfelt, you know? And especially when he says, God's got us, baby, God got the children, the devil on the playground, but God owned the building. He's trying to cope with divorce and understanding that God has the children. And then finally this line, I'm trying to do the right thing with the freedom you gave me. It's another one of these haunting lines. Like the freedom you gave me, like the freedom that he didn't want. And it seems like he's lamenting the loss of the relationship while also trying to recognize that it was necessary. Drums, you'll never guess. Bass and clap, we'll call that a half. Pure Souls with Roddy Ricch and Genesia. I love Roddy Ricch's voice. One of my favorite tracks on the album, this gospel organ. And I like how Roddy Ricch is able to like sing and then also rap. And I like how he's talking about his disagreements with Kanye, about Kanye pissing on his Grammy, and just says, I just want my dog to pipe down. I just like someone calling Kanye his dog. Kanye's verses are all different and they're all awesome. They seem to be partly about like his lower middle class standing, you know, growing up and then being proud of Chicago South Side, we outside. And the final verse and the bridge is one of my favorite parts of the album, right? The drums come in and out with the organ. It ain't how it used to be. This is new to me, so get used to me. Looking in the mirror, it's the truth to me. Looking at my kids, it's the proof to me. Devil, get behind me. I'm loose, I'm free. That's sideways. That was supposed to be really slick. Devil, get behind me. I'm loose, I'm free. Okay? This whole thing about his kids are the proof and that's the truth, you know? And this whole line, the way he says, devil, get behind me, I'm loose, I'm free, is just such a beautiful, meaningful, sweet way. It's that way that Kanye where you can feel the genuineness and the authenticity. This is by Duccio, a great Renaissance painter from Siena, northern Italy, and I have this hanging up in my wall. And I found this on the floor, on the parking lot of my church, and it says, nice try, Satan. But my kids read it and said, nice, try Satan. Which is also kind of like, get behind me, devil. When my wife heard it, you know, English is not her first language, she thought that meant like, devil help me, devil support me, which obviously it doesn't mean. But I just love this image. And when I hear him saying, devil, get behind me, I'm loose, I'm free, this is exactly what I see and what I hear. And I think it's beautiful. There's also a little bit of a subtle play here. Throughout the song, they sing the truth is only what you get away with. Implied that like truth is malleable and it's just if you can get away with it, that it's true. Then at the end with Genesia, it builds up and it gets totally different. And it becomes the truth is the only thing you get away with. So it takes the same lines and changes the meaning completely to where the only thing you can get away with is the truth. By the way, it's one of my things. I don't lie. You should try it. Just don't lie. Just never lie. If you never lie, your life is much better. Not even about big things, about small things. Just try never lying. Drum report, clapping, and bass drum. We'll call that half drums. Come to Life is maybe the most avant-garde production on the album. There's prayer, yelling. I love like the speaking in tongues. I want more of this on the album. Kind of reminds me of like a Christian version of What's Going On. Just the way he sings all the way throughout here is just beautiful. Like he has this like, his singing chops have gotten a lot better, and especially like his phrasing. The way he says, I don't want to die alone, sad when she's gone, mad when she's home, mad when she's gone. Like the dissolution of a marriage, it's just beautiful, and it gets matched with these people speaking in tongues behind. The instrumentation, the synthesizers, and then pianos, and then he keeps talking about his uncle going to jail. And I'm telling you, this album is not just about incarceration, it's about the pain on the African-American family of all this incarceration. It just builds beautifully in the pre-chorus with these synthesizers going, and then he says, sadness setting in again. There's not a better description of how it feels to become depressed. And he gets almost conversational while he's talking, while he's singing. The pianos come in, these crazy keyboards all over the place. He talks about buying his daughter Nikes, even though he has a deal with Adidas, you know, and this is not about me. And it's just a really beautiful line, just ending with this concept of when I'm free, I'm free. Like he's free, he's out of jail. Spiritually, emotionally, physically, relationally, he's out. Drum report, no drums, unless you consider piano to be drums because they're percussion. Then it ends with the song, No Child Left Behind. No Child Left Behind. Vori gets the last word on the album, as he should. Very similar to Godbreathed on this, just with the chant and the organ. And it's kind of odd, No Child Left Behind, because No Child Left Behind is this like educational thing that George Bush did. And as we know, George Bush doesn't care about black people, and No Child Left Behind has left a very ambiguous mark on American education. A lot of people consider it to have done really bad things for American education. That's not how he means it, it's just an expression. But the real emotional strength to how Vori is singing. Again, the emotional range of Breda on display here. And the album ending with Kanye saying over and over again, he's done miracles on me. It's this spiritual release of the album. We've been through all of this. We've gone through all this. It's impossible not to see it in the context of the live shows, of imagining him burning alive, or imagining him flying up into the stadium, you know. And it's just, it's a really cathartic moment. He has really succeeded, more than he did on Jesus is King, in giving us a spiritual experience. It's a psychological experience, a musical experience, a spiritual experience, a divorce experience, love, loss, life. Did I say it's my second least favorite Kanye album? I will say a couple more things. I'm very happy that he released the edited version and not with swears, because I don't like listening to swears, and I especially don't like listening to racial slurs whenever I listen to music with my kids. To the point where, look in the description, I'll include links to edited versions of songs from Kanye that I made back in 2014, because the album was too dirty and my kids loved it. So I took Harry Potter clips from the Harry Potter movies, because I loved Harry Potter back then. Speaking of canceled, rightfully canceled. Like I took the Harry Potter quotes and put them over the swears. And it's a thing I'm really proud of. So that's that. Also, when I learned that Kanye's gonna be releasing an album about his mom, I decided I would release my album that I made about my mom. So that's also in the comments. It's on Bandcamp. It's free. I made it 20 years ago. It's pretty good. It's kind of interesting. Check it out if you want. Here's the drum report. No Child Left Behind. No drums. So here we have the drum report. Okay? No drums at all on 9 songs. Half drums on 10 songs. Full drums on 4 songs. Listen to hip hop from here on out. How much drums are there going to be? Probably a lot less. These are my Patreons. I'm getting more and more. I now have 20,000 subscribers. I never thought I'd get over 1,000. My kids never thought I'd get over 100. So thank you to all these people. I take all the money you give me and I buy music. I'm going to be buying my music for August very soon. I'm getting very excited about that. So thank you all for supporting me. And I think I have therapy like right now. Like I'm going to hang up and go do that. Because it's okay to not be okay. All right. Until next time, there's the camera.